one and all. Thank you very much to all of the panelists for joining us today for the association's Leading Through Crisis discussion. Every single one of them are experts in their field, highly experienced professionals, who are also representative of our industries in many ways. So I really am privileged to be one of their number. Very much the junior of the group. Having worked with all of you over the years, it is a privilege to be here. So thank you for joining us. So what is this session about? The key thing is, as all of the Future Print Leaders Summit has done, is the summit is dedicated to exploring leadership, vision, and inspiration for the future of print. And the events of the last year really did throw the world into turmoil. And in times of crisis, communities look to leaders to provide reassurance, guidance, and positivity about the future. And in our previous conversations and discussions, that is something that we all firmly agreed on, is that associations such as ours do have an important role to play, especially in keeping our industries head up, fighting for them. So without further ado, I would like to start with getting all the panel to introduce themselves. So Dick, if I could start with you, could you just introduce yourself and just give us a quick snapshot of your organisation?
Yeah, sure. I'm Dick Searle. I run the Packaging Federation, which was formed in 1992, and we're the overarching federation for the UK packaging manufacturing industry. So apart from most of the larger companies who are members of ours, our membership includes all 11 sector trade associations, and we act as the only voice for the industry as a whole. I've spent 53 years in the industry, I'm sure it shows, and I'm fiercely proud of the contribution that it makes to modern society.
Great. So Sean, can I come to you next?
You certainly can. Thank you, Brendan. Firstly, it's a privilege to be here and to be amongst all these esteemed professionals in our industry. Thank you for having me today. So I'm Sean Holden. I represent here, I'm a board member on the International Sign Association UK, which was formerly the British Sign and Graphics Association. We represent all of the sign and graphics, sign makers, graphics providers in wide formats, down to smaller format in terms of, as an association with their kind of voice. We're also quite an old association. We've been going for nearly 100 years. And as I say, I think along a lot of our members would have seen a huge change in the businesses we represent. We cover things like sign making, obviously, neon, pre-press, all those kind of things in terms of what we do. So the technology has evolved hugely, which is also something we've had to contend with over the years. And as I say, we're a voice for those guys that could be from a single sign maker or a graphics professional in his back room or bedroom, right up to some sort of PLC companies that are involved in our business. So thanks for having me, Brendan, and I look forward to contributing to the conversation.
Great, thank you, Sean. Charles, go to you next.
Thank you, Brendan. I'm Charles Jarrod. I'm Chief Executive of the Bpif. We're a trade association for print, as you may know, covering commercial print. We cover cartons, we cover labels, alongside what I would call the usual trade association activities, such as data, research, insight, and lobbying. We also deliver health and safety and HR support to the sector. So the last 12 months have been pretty busy with that sort of things. And actually also we run a significant apprenticeship training organisation. So we provide probably 90% of the apprenticeship training into the sector with some sort of 500 apprentices.
Fantastic. Jane, if you'd like to go next.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jane Rixon. I work for HP in the UK in the large format area. But I'm also on the board of Print Scotland. When I first got involved with Print Scotland, it was Bpif, the Scottish Print Employers Federation. Nice catchy title. It then went into Graphic Enterprise, which again was another catchy title. And then we decided about 3-4 years ago to talk about more what we actually represent, which is print in Scotland, whether that is commercial print, labels and packaging similarly, or large format printing. Very similarly, a lot of what we do is there was a college in Glasgow that did all the building and printing. And when it closed, we basically took over the training of apprentices. We employed one of the lecturers there to actually do the training of apprentices. So we're very keen on bringing youth into the industry. that's a little bit of background from me. Thanks, Brendan.
Fantastic. Fraser, and then we'll move to Jos to finish.
So thank you very much for letting me join this panel. Obviously, I'm one of the directors of FuturePrint and running the Leaders Summit. So thank you for letting me join. I guess the value of me being on the panel is that between 2003 and 2011, I was the managing director of FESPA, who a few of you may know as a trade association. Admittedly, that's a few years ago. But I can give some insight into kind of what I feel is important in terms of leadership. Obviously, Marcus and I then ran Imprint, EcoPrint, and trade shows in the print sector. And we're obviously now running FM Future, which is running a number of these virtual summits. So, yeah, we have a few things to say.
Great, thank you. And Jos?
Also, on my behalf, thanks for having me, Brendan and Fraser, of course. VAGC stands for Innovation Center for Graphic Communication, and we are an independent non-profit innovation center and a network organization based in Belgium, but active in the Benelux region. I have a team that consists of 6 print professionals with a lot of print innovation experience. And I suppose I'm a bit of an outsider in this panel discussion because we are not a typical print federation. What we do is we look at innovation and technology, workflows, production processes, and business models. And in this, we try to act very agile by providing a customer-centric approach to our members and our strategic partners. Our daily operation is built around one-to-many activities. These are mainly our 5 events a year that we organize, and we also organize, if it is possible, of course, an abroad study trip. We have also 1 to a few activities, which includes our open and in-company trainings, and we give them in Dutch and in English. And last but not least, we have our one-to-one activities, and this is our consultancy at which we also involve our small lab facility.
Fantastic, thank you, Jos. So the first question that I will be addressing to everyone on the panel, but is really key, and is one that we have to ask ourselves as associations all the time. And before we do that, it's just to give you a quick introduction to myself. I am the General Manager of the Independent Print Industries Association. I am the Chairman of the British Association for Print and Communication, which is now part of the same group. And we are a trade association focused on the commercial print industry, split between trade print for the IPIA and retail and copy shop print for the Bpif. So everyone, do you think trade bodies, association groups, have a privileged role in our industries, and what is it? And do you feel we have a responsibility to lead our respective industries? So to kick this off, Dick, I think you've got some important views on this. What do you think?
Well, in our case, as I've said, our role is to represent our industry as a whole, and in particular to vigorously highlight that packaging is not an optional extra, as some politicians believe, but a fundamental part of the critical national infrastructure. And with some 85,000 people, our industry is also a top 10 manufacturing industry. Of course, we are a service industry, something I've always preached in the days when I ran companies, even though service industry with a product. Interaction with our customer base is essential. So a lot of my time is spent working with their trade associations, particularly the Food and Drink Federation. I also serve on the government's Food Cobra, and I represent the industry on the Courtauld 2025 steering group on food waste and carbon impact. And as an aside, everyone says that packaging has a major impact. I would point out the greenhouse gas impact of packaging in the food and drink supply chain is 3%. What's inside the packaging is 60%. And yet you hear people talking all the time about packaging rather than product. But the question is, do we lead? In describing what we do, I would prefer to use the word guide rather than lead. And that includes, from time to time, I have to say, working to prevent wars between material sectors.
So we have a peacekeeper, the United Nations, in our midst.
I used to referee pro football, so I guess that was good training.
Charles, you have a knowledge and an industry experience that has started on the coal face of the commercial print industry. You have been right in there as a commercial printer yourself, transitioning into trade association. do you feel we have a privileged role? What's our responsibility?
I think we're definitely privileged, because I think we're in a great, and one of the great things about being involved in the trade association is our ability to go and talk to and engage with organizations right across the sector. And that is a huge privilege. But I think we feel our sense of responsibility even more strongly. And that is a responsibility to represent and communicate on behalf of the sector. And Dick has touched on that. I think sometimes that's been involving changing government perceptions, for example. We saw that very clearly at the start of the pandemic about what print is and what print is not. It's a huge, dynamic, entrepreneurial, diverse sector. There are challenges in parts of the industry, but overall, it's thriving. I think a leadership role that we play is one of coordination as much as anything. There are common themes and issues and challenges which affect the whole sector that are critically important that we address as a sector, but which individual companies cannot deal with individually because they're too busy or because it's not their responsibility. And that's where we come in. And that might be in developing training standards, for example, or it might be in raising standards in terms of environmental performance and helping the sector do that as a whole, or on cyber, for example. So yes, it's a clear responsibility and it's a privilege. And do we lead in that process? Yes, I think we probably do, because I think we distill out some of the themes that we hear when we talk to everyone across the sector, and then we coordinate the actions to try and enable change through that process.
Fantastic. Thank you, Charles. Jane, you have a unique perspective in being both working for an international, multinational manufacturer of high acclaim, whilst also working and being on the board of an association yourself with Print Scotland. What's, with that kind of background, again, same question, what's our privileged role? What's our responsibility?
I think it is varied, and I'm not going to name any names of associations, but I think some associations have particularly recently stepped up and taken more of a leadership role. I think a number of the companies that we deal with are smaller businesses, and especially during the pandemic, when there was so much information flying around about CBILS, about furlough, about all these different things, I think particularly our director, Gary Richmond, really took a lot of effort to make sure that the people in our membership organisation understood the support that was available for them. And also, we lobbied where we could with the Scottish Government to make sure that support was available for the membership and for the industry as a whole. And coming back to what the other people have said, a lone voice in all of this is not enough. You're not going to get anything. So I think our responsibility and leadership role is to speak on behalf of the sector professionally and passionately, and show that print is a growing industry, is an exciting industry, and there's a lot of opportunities for younger people coming into it as well. So I think part of the leadership of the associations should be ensuring all those opportunities for people in print.
Yeah, fantastic. And then Jos, Sean, and then I'll come to Fraser, because I've got a very important question that I want to ask you. So Jos, what's your view on the same subject?
I follow Dick on this. I think leading is a big word. What we try to do at VGC is to give guidance to our members. And to do that, you need, as every other company, of course, a plan and a motivated team. What we see in print companies, which are, by the way, mostly SMEs, is that there is often a lack of time to follow trends and innovation. A lot of time is consumed by production issues. We try to aggregate information and bring an independent look on technology, on business models. What we also see is that suppliers give a lot of free information to the PSPs. The last year, you see an explosion of free seminars, which are organized online by suppliers and thus easily accessible. Of course, this information is, at least I would say, a little bit affected by the portfolio of the supplier. And we believe that our role is to guide our industry in terms of innovation and technology. We see that as our USP, and we are convinced that we need to bring this message to our members in a modern way. So we need also to go online, we need to use social media and bring insights from other industries also into our industry and into our network. I think that's a really important role for us to do.
Yeah. Thank you, Jos. Now, Sean, before I come to Fraser and ask you a nice juicy question with your experience in the industry, Sean, I've seen the work. So I was the editor of Signlink magazine for 9 years, and I worked very closely with Sean's Trade Association, fantastic group. I've seen the work that you've done that is literally, like, for instance, the work that you did save the neon industry. I can promise you, if it wasn't for the work that formerly the BSGA had done, neon would no longer be allowed in this country. They saved that from happening. So Sean, again, responsibility, leadership.
Well, again, I think all the members on this panel have answered quite a lot of the questions already. I think it's leadership and direction is a key element, but it's part of that is guidance. I think we've touched on that before. I also think the big part of that is community. I think we all have a responsibility to work together. The smaller voice needs to be heard as well as a larger voice. And it's up to us to sort of get all parts of our sector together, to communicate together, to give a more balanced opinion to people that we need to speak to. And I think it's our responsibility to collate all of that information from our members, to pass that on to suppliers, to pass that on to government, to pass that on to local authorities. So we all kind of have the same sort of end in hand. So we all understand the problems of the challenges. The businesses also have different kinds of levels, right? I spoke before about being small to large. All of those have different requirements, and especially over the last 12 months. I mean, even if we aren't any resource to be a shoulder to cry on sometimes, or give advice, or to even just point people in the right direction, and trusted advice, as in we've worked with these people before, we've had experience with these people, have these guys a go, even if we don't have that expertise in hand. It's not just about maybe training in the areas that we have in printing, graphics or whatever, but it's also in training and providing support in those elements we spoke about, apprenticeships, health and safety, all those kind of stuff where smaller businesses might struggle. And to give that advice and guidance that's based around sort of legality doing. So I think it's more to, as well as leadership, it's also to build a community. And so that one voice, we can all go with one voice of an industry, we have more power together. And I think that's kind of what we're looking for as an organisation more than anything else, and represent some of those smaller market, those smaller cottage sort of industries up to the very, very large print and commercial print and wide format printers in the market right now. So it's a very broad, very, very broad statement I'm saying. But again, it's all about, I think everybody has one voice, and we're here as that, should we say, foghorn to get that out there. Excuse my French.
Great. So Fraser, you've got a wonderful outside perspective on this, because you mentioned been the previous MD of FESPA, a global trade association. The direct question is, do you feel trade associations delivered on their responsibilities in this pandemic?
And actually, that's the thing that I kept thinking whilst people were talking, and I think everyone around this conversation has been pretty active as organisations for their members. And I think that's the crucial bit, is that how have we responded in the crisis? Because that's the issue here, is this isn't about leadership in normality. All of you do that anyway. This is about leadership through crisis. Completely unusual, completely unique. It sounds to me like pretty much all of you have done that. You know, I know for a fact that IPIA, it sounds like Bpif, it sounds like Dick's Association, will be super active with government lobbying in the crisis for the members. That, in my mind, is leadership. That is what we need if you are a member of a trade association. My concern is, whether it's a concern or not, is that there are some organisations out there who have just not done this, not represented their members wholly through the crisis, and have just gone, it's a crisis, we're kind of just going to back off a bit, it's not what we do. And that's where I feel some organisations have not been strong. You know, I was talking to Ford Bowers of Printing United. The US, they've been super active through the crisis. Bpif been super active through the crisis. That's what I guess is the important thing at this point. Now, I know there's loads of challenges and it's about responding to membership, but that's for me the important bit here. You know, leadership in normality is very different. It's recruitment, it's training, it's all the things that Sean was talking about, that kind of longevity of the community. Crisis is different though, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly. And I think, I mean, I'd like to come to you now, Charles, because certainly in commercial print, we've been hit hard. And with our main sectors in hospitality, retail and leisure, which is, 70% of our industry's income, we have been hit really hard. I know how hard you at the Bpif have worked. The IPIA, BAPC and Bpif worked together, cheek and jowl, on several government initiatives, and we've liaised with government. We worked really hard. So, Charles, how has the Bpif risen to the challenges faced by your members and the industry, and what are you going to be focused on for the year ahead?
Well, I think the first point to make, Brendan, is just looking at how we've all worked together as trade associations. And I think it's just worth remarking on that, and that particularly through an organisation that you sit in the GPMA, we sit together collectively and try to coordinate and speak with one voice for the sector. And I think that's a really positive step. In terms of what we've done as an organisation, over the last 12 months, initially it was absolute crisis mode 12 months ago. It was talking to government to get them to understand that when they talked about essential workers and essential businesses, that was within companies, not across sectors. So some of our members do all sorts of things which actually were absolutely essential to transportation, for example. And if they were not going to be open, then trains couldn't run and helicopters couldn't fly. And we needed to get across the complexity of our sector to a government who probably, putting it politely, misunderstood that. They very much listened to that, and they took it on board. I think we avoided what frankly might have been a sort of metaphorical car crash of sectors being closed down in their entirety because they engaged with us all. The support schemes were brought in, and actually some of those schemes had a very difficult birth, but they were really effective, in particular the job retention scheme. And then the civil scheme was again very challenging at first. I don't think it's ideal by any measure, but it has come in and it's enabled companies to survive and carry on through this process and protect a lot of good, worthwhile jobs in good, worthwhile businesses. As we head out of this process, the work has been in communicating to government that demand isn't going to come back overnight. It will come back, but the support schemes needed to be tapered and tailored through that process. And both you and I, Brendan, have had particular feedback that the information that we've put into government has been material, and I'm sure Dick and the other associates are saying, but it's been material in enabling the business department in government to talk to Treasury and to win the argument in terms of carrying those schemes forwards. And so that's been absolutely vital. Just very quickly, I'll wrap up in a second. The other huge area of activity for us was around health and safety and HR. So we produced a COVID secure roadmap, which has been, again, vital to lots of our members. It's available at a high level to non-members, but it's avoided major problems in terms of health and safety visits and businesses shutting down when they've had COVID infections. And actually also from an HR point of view and an employment point of view, enabling companies to take advantage of things like the job retention scheme and not trip up on the hoops that they need to jump through. So yeah, it's been flat out. I think actually all organisations, or most organisations in our sector, have stepped up quite considerably, but there's a lot more to do.
Yeah, fantastic. Jos, I'd like to come to you now because you have a European perspective. And I know that you are keen to stress previously that you guys are not a traditional trade association. You are a group of like-minded companies pulling in the same direction. So again, how have you risen to these challenges? What value have you delivered?
So Brendan, over the last year, we had even more conversations with our members and strategic partners to start with. We chose to start in a very early stage to go more online with our initiatives. So we bought, I think in April last year, a full option Zoom license, and we start getting up a new initiative. We want to keep the communication going on behalf of technology innovation, although it was difficult for the company to make the switch and to create a good mindset in that. I can give you some examples. For example, what we did was a new initiative that was called #@your-home info sessions on various print topics, PDF, color, inkjet, substrates, web to print, and so on. And we decided to open this session also to non-members. and additionally not to charge them. Of course, that was a little bit disruptive, but what we see today is that a lot of those non-members, participants become member today. So in total, we hosted 10 sessions, and I think we welcomed over 600 participants, which is huge. If you look at the Benelux demographics, of course, it's a little bit different than in the UK. We have a bigger audience there. And for our strategic partners, we set up a virtual exhibition floor, as we called it. And the idea was that by canceling Drupa, Vespa, and other big events, the suppliers needed to show their solutions to the PSPs, to the industry, and we gave them a platform to communicate with the Benelux graphic arts industry. And also that event was very enthusiastically received, and not only by the strategic partners, but also by the PSPs. We do a lot of events, as I mentioned before, and of course, all the events in the past were physical events. And what we also did in the third quarter last year was to host a live broadcasting congress, and we hired a really great TV studio that we provided with professionals, and we hosted a very famous Belgian TV host, and also our partners could bring in some commercials. So what I want to say is that we went very fast, and we tried new initiatives, and that was received very well by the audience. So I think what we want to do over the next months is, of course, the Corona crisis will urge us to be online for the next months until the end of June. But starting from September, I think, we will go back to more physical events. Also our trainings, I think we will organize more hybrid trainings also. But our Congress in November, we will set it up as a physical Congress, because I think there is a lot of information at this moment. There's a lot of digital content. If you want, you can watch online sessions whole day long, and recorded sessions in the weekend, it's no problem. But I think people need those physical contacts and the networking. So we try, when the government allows us to set up again more physical events, of course, we will take with us the lessons we learned in the online world.
Fantastic, thanks, Jos.
That's interesting, isn't it, Brendan? That and a question came up, didn't it, that someone was asking about the responsibility of trade associations is that networking element, that element of community and connection. Of course, the challenge has been we've not been able to do that.
Yes, indeed. I mean, we had an initiative this morning. Some of you, may have attended. We had the big breakfast. So we've created every 2 weeks, between 8:30 in the morning and 9:30 in the morning, using a platform called Remo, an open source. Members, non-members, the whole industry can come in and network in there and get as close to real networking as possible, because it's so vital. I think there's another, having been on the GPMA with Dick and seeing the work that you've done within your organization, you really have risen to the challenge over the last year. And I've heard how good you are at holding government to account. So could you just give me a bit of a snapshot, as well as some of the feisty exchanges you've had with government? Dick, you're on mute.
Apologies, you'd think I'd work it out by now, wouldn't you? I characterize my job as being paid to be rude to politicians. I have to say our industry's been incredibly fortunate. 90% of our industry's been working flat out. The 10% that hasn't is the ones who are specialized in a lot of the areas which have impacted colleagues on this. Hospitality, food service, and so on, where it's been very much more difficult. I think for us, the challenge of the last 12 months obviously have been COVID and EU exit. And we've really focused on providing timely information and problem solving. I'm a member of a number of groups, which give me rapid access to a range of sources of information. We really have to fight our corner very hard. An example of this, I guess, is when I cornered George Eustice, who's the DEFRA minister, and asked him how much food and drink he thought he would circulate around the country without my industry's products. And that enabled me within 20 minutes to secure immediate recognition of our industry as a key part of the crucial supply chains. And so it became designated as a key industry with essential workers. And that was pretty beneficial to our membership. And I know on the back of that, a number of other areas have been able to do the same. I think the real problem that we have is that government simply does not understand supply chains and the huge cracks that are now appearing in those supply chains. And we really do need to leverage our economic might by working together. What government doesn't understand is basically where money comes from. Whenever I meet a new MP, which is not very often at the moment, I ask them, where do you think money comes from? They look at me rather strangely, but then I eventually point out to them that actually the only thing that fuels the economy is business. That's where the wealth is created, which actually runs. So why do governments listen so little to business? As an aside, I've just been on a 2-hour call with DEFRA about a whole raft of legislation which is going to cost the food and drink industry and all industries somewhere like £5 billion a year. And that's just absolutely laughable. That includes, by the way, us paying all the costs of cleaning up litter. And it's a real demonstration of how much more that we need to do. But of course, this year is going to be about the economy, continuing legacy of COVID, and the immense challenges of EU exits, particularly for our customers. I sit on the FDF's Trade Association Roundtable, and it's frightening what's going on out there in terms of some of the regulations and some of the paperwork and so on. And business is going out. Ian Wright, who runs the FDF, who's a force of nature, was on a BBC program and was asked whether he thought that all that we were encompassing at the moment we're facing was basically teething problems. And he said, if you've got a company, a 3-generation family company that goes out of business, do you call that a teething problem? And that's happening right, left and center. So we really do need to work together. We do it already, but we need to work together harder. We need to leverage our economic might. Across all of our groups, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of jobs and billions and tens of billions of pounds. And we may need to make government understand that really business is the engine of the economy. On a slightly lighter note, and answering Tony Kenton's question about networking, networking is absolutely crucial. It's at the heart of what the PACFed does. Not quite so easy at the moment with Zoom calls, but we did hit on one rather successful one, which I shared with our colleagues on a different call. We have a CEO dinner every year. Well, we couldn't do that last year, so we had a CEO cheese and wine instead. I provided the wine, they provided the cheese. And a meeting I thought would last for an hour went on for nearly 3. It was very, very successful. Recommend it to you. And Majestic Wine are fantastic when it comes to doing that.
Other wine brands are available. So before I move on to the next topic, which is going to be all about getting young people into the industry and the importance that our associations have in education, Jane and then Sean, I would just like to come to you. Jane, I've seen the fantastic work that Print Scotland have done, and also a particular point is that the experience in Scotland, because of devolved government, has been different to England and the other nations. How has Print Scotland risen to the challenges, and what's been your particular experience?
I mean, being fair, from a Print Scotland perspective, I spoke to Gary Richmond, who's the director, because being an employee of HP, I cannot lobby on behalf of another company. It's not something I'm able to do. So I know the Print Scotland board offered a lot of mentorship and support, because it's a board full of experienced print professionals. So they've helped other people within the membership. They've also lobbied MPs for the route map out of lockdown. One of the things that we did find is we were constrained to some degree by the UK government, because Scotland, whether Scottish people like it or not, is funded from the UK as a whole. So what we've really found more in Scotland is that printing companies are helping each other more. So it used to be that, and I've spoken to a number of my customers across the country, and whereas they used to be very protective of their work, what they without a doubt have been doing is sharing the work out more, so that everybody has a share of what work is available, and they all hopefully will survive through this process. I mean, speaking on behalf of HP as opposed to Print Scotland, just for one sec, is what we've tried to do is give a voice to the customers. So, you know, do case studies and then like a 1 year on to give them some publicity about the services that they offer, to try and encourage business into those people. So it's kind of a double-edged thing. I think in the Print Scotland side of things, it's been more about support and advice, and that, I wouldn't call it a comfort blanket, but that way of really trying to look after people when they've been going through such hard times, and having the experience of the more experienced managing directors for some of the younger people to let them know what support is available and how they can access it. I think that's been absolutely, I think the HR support has been more crucial than anything during the last 12 months, and it's going to continue to be really important. So I think the services that are offered from the trade associations are probably more valued now by members than they were before. That's my experience, obviously, the last 12 months.
I just want to add something to that. I think that's an interesting point. And actually, when we put together, and Brendan and I talked about doing this session about leadership from the trade associations, I think that's what we were looking towards. How you, whether you like it or not, you are leaders, you lead membership, you lead a community. How are you, and how have you, through this crisis, shown leadership? And I can hear you saying, you know, the lobbying element, completely right. It's been absolutely crucial because businesses are on their knees and we're on their knees. What else have you done to stand in front of the membership and say, guys, we're going to, you know, this is how we're going to take things forward? That's kind of what I was hoping that I would hear a little bit of. Tell me.
That's what we do all the time. That's what
Dick,
yes, it's been more focused on various things, but that's what we do all the time. We get people together, we talk about the issues.
Dick, sorry, that's what I was kind of looking for, I guess, was that, so for you to have said, I mean, what you've spent a lot of time talking about, and I'm absolutely supportive of it, is your activity with government, and I think that's been brilliant. But I also kind of thought you'd say, we've done some online stuff where we've said this is where we're taking the industry, this is what. So how have you, I mean, I don't know enough about your federation, but that's kind of what I was hoping to hear, that you said,
we have an online meeting every month.
Right, okay, that sounds good.
Which is usually 2 to 3 hours. We also have an all-party parliamentary group. That's online as well. It has to be online. The government have decreed that it's online until May at the earliest. I suspect it's going to be a little longer than that. So, I mean, but that's in our DNA. I mean, but, you know, we are a networking organisation. So
you immediately got into action and did the things that a trade association should be doing.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
I do.
And I don't think every trade association did that.
Well, I can't talk to the others. Well, I can talk to the 12 I've got in membership. They all do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just pick up a couple.
That's a really important point. Go on, Charles.
Over the last 12 months, the lobbying and representation has been critically important, and I think the role that we collectively all play as trade associations has just, often it's in the background, it's been put firmly in the foreground actually. And I think that trade associations haven't stepped up over the last 12 months. They never will, and I think the great majority have in a very significant way. That's inevitably been particularly focused on the pandemic and on Brexit, actually. And we can always do more, but there isn't that much more we can do. And the government have listened and engaged with that. I think what's interesting, though, is the broader themes and how we talk to our membership and how we provide leadership on those areas. And that's something that I know other trade associations think about, and we definitely do. You know, we see themes in our sector that we know that we need to work with our membership and with the sector on helping the sector improve its sometimes already good performance, but to raise it up from there. And environmental would be a classic case in point. You know, it's firmly back on the agenda. Actually, it's always been there, but it gets knocked off the agenda because surviving in business sometimes is quite tricky. actually.
Yeah.
And we can provide a role, and we do provide a role in that. And that's something that we're highly engaged with now. Actually, I have a personal bugbear. It's not a bugbear. I'm very aware of where our sector is going in terms of using data, for example. And I think that we need collectively as an industry to look at cybersecurity and data much more carefully. And again, we've talked to our members about that. They feel very strongly about the same things, and we are coordinating initiatives in those areas. So I don't know whether that answers your question, but it gives an indication of the sorts of topics and themes that distill out of the conversations that we have as we look across the sector, and then what we do about it.
Yeah, I guess. Sorry, just to add, Brendan. The point I was trying to make was the audience that we're addressing today may not be your membership, may not be your, Dick's membership, and therefore may not know what you guys do on a daily basis and actively as a group of you. And so I really wanted to draw out from that and give you an opportunity really to say that's what trade associations give you value for.
Yeah.
That's what we're about. Because if Tony Moxon asks a question, about what are you doing, why'd you do it, when are we going to get more networking? Well, then that's worrying, isn't it? Because the reality is you do a hell of a lot of other things.
Yeah.
And you've just proved that.
Yeah, that's a really important point, Fraser, a really important point. So actually, I would like to put that point to Sean, because I know that the particular experience in the signing graphics sector, the growth of wide format print, how you intersect with commercial print now, is also very unique. I mean, we've got so many unique perspectives on this panel. What have, again, that direct question to you from Fraser, what have those direct challenges been, and how have you guys risen to deal with them? What have you done extra over the last year?
I think a lot of it is obviously at the beginning of last year, this whole situation took everybody by storm. A lot of people sort of hid, or you looked like you were doing normal stuff, but yet frantically paddling under the surface. Now, obviously, like Dick's sector, signage is classed as a sort of an essential business. If you didn't have signage around, you wouldn't know where you were going. You wouldn't be able to communicate that around the store or retail, communicate safety. So that's kind of where sort of our members come into a fore. But part and parcel of that, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, like, as I say, signage in planning. For instance, the planning applications around the UK is all up in the air at them because no one knows what offices do what. I mean, if you have a sign in Northampton, that may be refused for planning permission, but that same sign in Oxford may be okay. So it's things like that. It's putting together all of this information, these different pockets of the sector, and there's different pockets of government that are local, not necessarily at the high-end parliament where Dick and his members might work in, but sort of because of those planning sectors, all those sectors outside, they need a voice to come from, because if you're a national sign maker, you might be able to go and put up a sign in front of a name drop, a Morrison's in one place, but not put that same sign up in somewhere else because the planning rules apply. And it's up to us as an organisation to lobby those different organisations around the UK, those different council bodies, to make sure those same rules apply, to give everybody the fair information, and then communicate that to our members. And that's kind of what we've tried to do. The networking thing, I think, is the side we're all dealing with out in a day-to-day business. We're not certainly a trade show. We're not trying to do online business. We are trying there as a focus to make our revenue from our membership and then support our members on that. And again, it's quite important to make that clear about where is your focus. And our focus is built around support as opposed to sort of networking and all the fuzzy stuff around the other side. We're not saying it's not worthwhile, but with the limitations that we all have in terms of people, and we're only a small association in terms of our paid staff, so we do have a limit of what we can do, and some of that has to be outsourced. So what we're trying to do again is build that build that voice, and then be that voice to go to the right places to get that voice heard for our members. And I think that's key, and we're only as good as our membership and to support them at the end of the day. And that's what we've essentially tried to do over the last sort of 12 months more than anything else.
Thanks, Sean. Now, with the 15 minutes that we've got left, I want to tackle two really, really important topics for us as trade associations that is part and parcel of that leadership question. So the first is, do you feel we have a responsibility to ensure we're encouraging young people to invest in our industries? And if so, what initiatives are you running to achieve this goal? What are we doing to educate the next generation coming in? And Jane, I know this is something particularly close to your heart, and also Print Scotland do a lot of great work. So could you just, again, on that really important point, young people into our industry?
Yeah, I've probably got two hats with this, which is the HP hat and the Print Scotland hat, because I think in the print industry in general, the age in general is going up, and we need to encourage people, younger people, into the industry. So Print Scotland, as I said earlier, they kind of took on the role of the training provider when the Glasgow College closed, and we employed one of the lecturers to actually work with us on the apprenticeship programme. I mean, it's basically, we fundamentally believe in bringing apprentices and young people into the industry, because we need to bring new blood and to bring new thinking into the industry. There is a skills gap coming up, well, as people leaving the industry and retiring, and we need to do our best to fill that skills gap, and apprentices is one of the things. We try very hard. We run the National Apprenticeship Awards every year, and we try and get publicity out there for that as well. We're also working with the printing charity to a degree, you know, things like offering support for the younger people in the industry through their kind of employee helplines and things like that. We do open days at the colleges. Gary goes into the schools and talks to people about a career in print. A couple of the members host days at their sites, at their factories, to show people that it's not just about maybe a printing machine, but it's about the design. It's about, there's other things around print to develop print. And it's not just about, like I said earlier, about the actual print, because some younger people don't find the actual end product particularly exciting. But it's also about showing the different aspects of print, because it expands such a massive area, you know, sitting behind by this wall. You know, print can come in so many different guises, whether it's packaging, whether it's labels, whether it's wallpaper, whether it's window blinds, and it's trying to show the creatives that there's a future for them within this industry. You can tell I'm very passionate about it, because I think I'm not from a creative background. I've been in it for what feels like a long time, but what still excites me about the industry is what the companies produce. It's the end product, and it's almost like limitless. The imagination of these people, these entrepreneurs, is limitless. And what I've been really pleased to see with a number of the organizations that we work with is they've had to change. You know, if they'd have carried on doing what they've always been doing during this pandemic, unfortunately, some of them wouldn't be here anymore. So what we've seen is the way that they've changed what they're doing. They've used their entrepreneurial skills to move, and whether it's doing PPE, whether it's doing visors, they're going where the market is. I think the key for us is getting the financial incentives for training. So we feel really strongly that it's underfunded. It is absolutely underfunded with the funding available to get young people into this industry, and also the age restriction. So you can't get the funding for people who are over the age of 24. And some people need to change from one business to another, and they might be over 24 when they choose to do that. But the challenge then is getting them into a funded apprenticeship. So funding, I think, is key to be able to bring more young people into the industry.
Yeah. And before I go to Charles, I'd just like to do two things. One is they won't blow their own trumpets, but I really think that Fraser and Marcus from Futureprint, throughout the last year, with all of these Futureprint conferences, these sessions, they have both done an amazing job in being leaders for our industry as well. And I know the ripples and the massive help that it's been to a lot of people. So I just wanted to give you two some serious praise, because you won't do it for yourselves.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brendan. You're very kind. And actually, just to say thank you to everyone on this panel, because you have been, you know, exactly what we've been looking for throughout the year. So thank you to all of you as well.
Yeah. Now, Charles, just quickly for time, before we move on to the last subject, which I'd like you to lead off on, Jos, is the Bpif have a huge involvement in training, and there isn't a lot of organizations doing this. The printing charity is one that I was a judge for today, Rising Star Awards. Please check out Rising Star Awards if you're not aware of them. But Charles, just quickly, you guys do a lot in this area as well.
Yeah, I think Jane made some excellent points, and I would kind of strongly agree with virtually all of those. I think the thing about skills and bringing people in, there isn't a silver bullet, but there are lots of things that we can all do. And our industry in some ways should be actually quite proud of its heritage in training. We have actually an excellent apprenticeship training program as an industry. My view and the Bpif's view is that what are the answers to this? Well, we need to have really attractive routes in, i.e. high quality apprenticeships. We need to be able to show that if you come in, and whether it's a level 2 apprenticeship or a level 3 apprenticeship, that you can progress through you can progress. Actually, there's progression all the way through, and there is in our sector. And I think Jane's point about age is actually right. And I don't know, Jane, whether you were talking about Scottish apprenticeships. I suspect you were, but the UK funding apprenticeship is different because there used to be an age restriction on funding of apprenticeships in the UK. We said, well, that's ridiculous, and it is. And it's gone. So the issue now is that you need to show that it's a fundamentally different job or apprenticeship training program to what you've done in the past, and then it is funded. That's quite good, but there's a lot more that can be done beyond apprenticeships. So there's a lot going on there. Schools engagement is another huge area to talk about. We're very active in that. One of the things that we do, again, a kind of classic trade association activity in lots of ways. Part of our job, not just in this, but is to do things which organizations want to do, but they're too busy to do running their own businesses. And so, for example, best practice toolkits and engaging with schools. How do you write a letter to the school if you're running a business to the right person? What safeguarding issues do you need to think about if you're hosting a visit? All those things we as a trade association can and do help the sector with to facilitate that process. And then finally, Brendan, because I know you've got an eye on time, we actually also, along with lots of other companies, are highly engaged in all the skills, not all the skills fairs, a lot of the skills fairs, a lot of the apprenticeship fairs. What we do there is facilitate our member companies exhibiting. And finally, very quickly, one really interesting anecdote. We did one actually about 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago. I was a little bit concerned that alongside the Googles and BBCs of this world, the voice of print might struggle to stand up. Absolutely not. When you show the products that our sector produces, we were overwhelmed with interest and interactivity with young people. So if we can get the message across, it appeals strongly.
Great, thank you.
And I think that's something really important to say about effective trade associations. You're not going to do all the stuff that's sexy all the time. You're not going to be necessarily, doing the big stuff that makes loads of money. It's going to be some of the other stuff that needs to be done to keep the industry flowing.
Yeah. And if it doesn't happen, things like standards fall over. Suddenly we haven't got
exactly. Yeah, and that is where some trade associations are guilty because they don't do everything that they need to be doing.
So, Jos, I'd now like to come to you for a really important point that you brought up in our pre-discussion. What is the balance of us as trade associations of focusing our efforts on selling our industries to outside markets? So Charles just referenced this. Educating them about our technical excellence, our products, our services. Do we educate our members to do that? Or do we put our shoulder to the wheel and be at the coalface to educate those sectors about what we can do?
Yes, Brandon, when people ask me this question on how to sell our industry to the outside world, I always make a comparison with my landscaper. And when I needed a new garden plan, I drove to his office and I parked my car in a weedy parking lot. And I can assure you that I was hesitant to enter. He probably was too busy designing beautiful garden plans and did not have the time to maintain his own garden. In fact, we do the same in our industry, I think. We create beautiful print products to promote our clients, but we forget to promote our own industry and our own companies. So of course we need technology. Tech is fun and necessary to create growth, and the new printing press is great fun, right? So, but we as an industry also need to pay attention to sales and marketing, I think. We need to communicate about how new print technology can help end customers to reach their goal, and that is extra exposure and extra turnover. So in my opinion, new product combinations, for example, new substrates or the integration of digital into print, and also new services will help us to increase margins and to create added values for our companies and our industry. As we keep thinking, as we did 10 years ago, we won't be able to leverage the potential of our industry. I think that's the point. And I think we also need to guide as an industry organizations, and we need to create awareness towards our industries. And this is not an or story, but rather an ends story. So yes, we need to educate our members, but we also can reach out to end consumers, as for example, brand owners. Why not create initiatives where PSPs, suppliers, and end consumers can engage with each other? I think that would be great. It's not an easy job, but that would be great. So in my opinion, this is not an ambiguous story, but a sequence of initiatives in which we must bring as many partners together as possible to bring a positive message about print to the outside world. So that's my opinion about your question.
Yeah, fantastic. And Dick, did you want to come in on that one as well? Remember to take yourself off mute.
Yeah, just done it. I think both is the answer to the question, both internally and externally. We're a slightly strange place because we're a federation, so our sector trade association, including Charles, who's one of our members, clearly are doing a lot of that. I have one plea, and I think it's very, very important, and that is that every single site should invite their local constituency MP to come inside, have a look at what they do, and win them over. Because I can shout until I'm purple in the face, but if constituency MPs, and that's where the votes are actually start to be convinced about the value of what we do, and that can encompass everything, including recruiting young people and so on. And by the way, one thing I've learned on that is it's a waste of time putting an old fogey like me in front of young people. We should be using our own apprentices, etc., to go and talk with great enthusiasm about how much fun they have in working in our wonderful industries. But please get local MPs into your factories. That will make life so much easier.
Yeah. And just as we start to wrap up, Sean, you made a very good comment in our sort of pre-chats about this, about how we need to remain relevant as trade associations, because old school models have become outdated. We aren't able to sit back on a big slush fund in the industry to just be a member of an organization for the sake of it. You've seen that transition over your career. So how do we remain relevant as trade associations?
I think it encompasses a lot of what we discussed earlier. Again, if you think about print, and I don't want to be an old bore, if you think about it's so diverse, so wild, and what happens now, and Jane will be a testament to this. I mean, did we talk about HP doing 3D printing? Is printing part of our organisation? It sure is. You can print circuit boards, you can print 3D models. That's still print. You're still putting something on something to create something. That's how diverse our industry is. So it's all about staying relevant, because if you think about it, print has had the most sort of diverse and the most change in its business in terms of technology, only compared to telecom. So what's going to happen in the next 10 years is going to be completely different. So as a trade association, we've got to be that solo voice, that kind of people that can dart in and out and see what's happening, understand these markets, see if there's any vertical markets that we can educate our members, both educate the market as a whole to say, look, this is a technology, bolt it onto what you've already got and it'll open up this market. This is an opportunity in this brand new sector. And again, it's just about understanding technology. I think we're well placed as trade associations to talk to lots and lots of different vendors, lots and lots of different technology providers, so we can integrate that with our current customer base and be that sounding board so people can come to us. And again, HP have some fantastic technologies that they can explain and we can educate to our members with a trusted voice. And I think that's kind of where we've got to take our initiatives going forward. There's a lot going to come out of what's happened over the last 12 months, and that's going to drive people, as we've already seen, into vertical markets that may change what their business is about. And that's where I think our relevance is, to be on the pulse of what's happening in technology and then relay that back into our industry as a trusted voice and go along with that and be that educational point, not just to our members, but to the wider audience. I think we've just got to be that sort of sounding board and speak to both the vendors, suppliers, technology designers, and the clients to actually see what they're actually looking for, and then kind of roll that up to one and put the right information out into the market.
Fantastic. So as we wrap up, I just want to thank everyone who's been in attendance. Thank you all to you guys for coming along. Please do go and check out all of these amazing organizations. engage with us, talk to us. You can find out what we do, how we can help you, and how we can move forward so that you can be more successful. But with that, I'd just like to thank the guys at FuturePrint for putting on yet another incredible event. And Fraser, I'd just like to hand the last word to you.
Yeah, thank you very much to all of you. Actually, what I was thinking as we were talking then is that we brought you together, and actually it sounds to me like you have different strengths, and the point that was being made is that actually you can't be all things to all men, or all things to all people. It just needs that sort of talking to different people and drawing the skills that are required. So I would encourage you maybe to Josh to talk to Charles. It sounds like Brendan, Charles, and Dick are all working together on trade associations, but it's that sense of working together which would make it easier, because you're not going to necessarily be able to do all the things you want to try and do. So hopefully this has been valuable in terms of that, if nothing else. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you to all of our guests, and I hope you have a lovely evening.